Chavismo just did something many believed impossible. One of its own media outlets, controlled directly by the regime, published a formal complaint against Tarek Williams' SAAB. You heard that correctly. Iguana TV uncovered what millions of Venezuelans have known for years, a network of extortion, illegal detentions, and judicial manipulation orchestrated from within the Attorney General's office. But this is no coincidence. This has a name behind it. This has an architect. And if you think this news is explosive, wait until you hear everything that comes after, because today Padrino López also fell. A new minister was named with connections that will surprise you. And the players of the World Baseball Classic made a decision that left the entire Chavista leadership looking ridiculous. Stay until the end, because the complete picture is more revealing than you can imagine. Let us go to what matters. The complaint that appeared this Tuesday the 18th on Iguana TV is not just any document. It is addressed to Citizen Larry DeBow, current Interim Attorney General of the Republic, and it is signed by a man named San Budaka, husband of attorney Ana Lid del Valle González Moronta. What happened to this woman? She was the victim of an illegal detention in the middle of a corruption scandal that exposes the absolute rot of the Venezuelan judicial system under Tarek's mandate. According to the document revealed, González Moronta suffered real-time extortion. Money was being demanded from her while she was being unjustly held. But the most serious part is that when she tried to report these abuses, a court dismissed her case in a suspicious manner. No appeal, no recourse, no justice. The same pattern as always. The modus operandi that thousands of Venezuelans know firsthand. But here comes what changes everything. Why is Chavismo itself bringing this to light now? The answer lies in Miraflores, or more precisely, in whoever now holds real power. Delcy Rodríguez has spent weeks dismantling everything that remained of Nicolás Maduro's structure. And Tarek Williams' SAAB was a central piece of that machinery, a man who converted the Attorney General's office into a machine of persecution and personal enrichment. The complaint published implicates prosecutors, judges, and officials across the justice system, a complete network of illegal intermediation. And we are not talking about rumors or speculation. There are excerpts of conversations, there is evidence of payments, there is documentary proof, all of it coming out through a media outlet that responds directly to Delcy Rodríguez's orbit. A coincidence? Please. Just a few weeks ago, Tarek attempted to negotiate his political survival. He asked Delcy for a position in some ministry. The response was a kick out the door. They sent him as a candidate for People's Defender, a minor position, almost humiliating for someone who believed himself untouchable. But they did not even allow him that. The latest confirmed information indicates that Tarek formally submitted his application. He registered everything before the technical committee. He met all the requirements, and when they reviewed the list of candidates, his name had disappeared. It was nowhere to be found. Delcy Rodríguez decided this man would have no possibility of remaining inside the system. No Attorney General's office, no People's Defender post, no protection. Tell me in the comments, do you believe Tarek Williams' SAAB will end up in prison, or will he manage to escape the country? There is something in nature that fascinates me and that applies perfectly to this situation. When an animal is expelled from the pack, it becomes easy prey. Predators identify it, stalk it, hunt it. That is exactly what Delcy is doing with Tarek. She removed him from the Chavista pack, stripped him of the regime's protection, and now the political scavengers are launching themselves at him. This complaint is only the beginning. More cases will keep surfacing. More victims will appear. All those investigations buried for years will begin to resurface, because now it is convenient, because now Delcy needs to sacrifice pieces to guarantee her own survival. And the most ironic thing of all is that we, those of us who have spent years denouncing Tarek's corruption, were always ignored. Hundreds of documented cases of extortion, families destroyed, business owners stripped of everything, political prisoners tortured under his supervision. And now, Chavismo discovers that Tarek was corrupt. How convenient, how timely. This is not justice. This is criminals settling scores with other criminals. But even if it is for the wrong reasons, let him fall. Let his face appear entering a prison. Let him pay for every arbitrary detention, for every act of torture, for every family he destroyed. And hopefully, if there is any real justice in this process, he ends up being handed over to international authorities. Now, Tarek's fall is not an isolated event. It forms part of a systematic purge that Delcy Rodríguez is executing with surgical precision. And today, we have another head that rolled, a fairly heavy one. Vladimir Padrino López is no longer Minister of Defense. This figure, who for years boasted about anti-missile systems, who displayed cardboard military strategies worthy of a board game, who promised to defend sovereignty while the country sank into misery, this man received his official dismissal today. Delcy Rodríguez informed the country that she has appointed General Gustavo González López as the new Minister of Popular Power for Defense. Just like that, no ceremony, no real acknowledgements, a simple communique and out. And now what will become of Padrino López? This question should be keeping him awake at night, because this man carries a $15 million bounty on his head. While he was minister, he had certain institutional protection. Now he is politically naked. Any group of ambitious military officers could see him as a golden opportunity. The Venezuelan constitution prohibits the extradition of nationals. That is true. But there are other ways. There are alternative methods. Ask Maduro how he ended up in the United States. They knew where his house was. They knew Celia's movements. They had all the information. And one day he simply disappeared and appeared on the other side. Delcy could perfectly repeat that scheme. A wink to American authorities, a shared location, and then the official communique. How strange. He disappeared. We do not know what happened. It was not us. I want your opinion. Will Padrino López flee to Russia, or will he end up being handed over like Maduro? Russia is a logical option for him. He was always a Kremlin protege. But leaving Venezuela at this moment is extremely risky, and staying is worse. The future of Padrino López is a dead end. May he get exactly what he deserves. Now let us focus on who replaces him, because this has implications that few are analyzing correctly. Gustavo González López is not unknown. This man served as director of the Bolivarian Intelligence Service in 2 separate periods. He was Minister of Interior. He was head of the General Directorate of Military Counterintelligence. He was commander of the Presidential Military Household, a pure intelligence profile, an operator of the shadows, but he also carries a history stained with blood. The UN mission in 2020 found reasonable grounds to believe he participated in arbitrary detentions, torture, and repression against opponents. The 2014 protests identify him as one of the direct responsible parties. He has been sanctioned by the United States since 2015, also by the European Union, Switzerland, Canada, and Panama. He has frozen assets and active travel bans. In short, he is another regime enforcer, another repressor in uniform. But here comes the detail that should deeply concern Chavismo. Do you remember when the CIA director visited Venezuela a few weeks ago before meeting with Delcy Rodríguez? Guess who received him with an enormous smile? Exactly. Gustavo González López, the same man who is now Minister of Defense. The images were clear, the head of American intelligence greeting this man effusively as if they were old acquaintances. And the interpretations are inevitable. It was González López who facilitated information for Maduro's capture. That is why Delcy is now rewarding him with the most important position in the military apparatus. If this is true, and everything points in that direction, we are witnessing a historic shift. Venezuela went from being infiltrated by the Cuban G2 to being inspected by the CIA. The same intelligence apparatus that Chavismo demonized for 25 years now has an ally inside the Ministry of Defense. This sounds uncomfortable. It sounds contradictory. But reality always surpasses propaganda. And speaking of propaganda, there is something you need to know. Because while Delcy moves pieces on the political board, she is also investing resources in laundering her international image. and the way she is doing it is as crude as it is revealing. An independent investigation discovered a network of fake media outlets called Hispan Online, 14 YouTube channels disguised as news networks from Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Spain, Ecuador, the United States, and Argentina. 23 supposed informational programs, all designed to spread propaganda favorable to Delcy Rodríguez. But here is the trick. They did not use artificial intelligence. They did not create digital avatars. They hired real actors, flesh and blood people with diverse accents to give credibility to these fake news outlets. At least 15 actors and voiceover artists were identified. All of them live in Argentina, primarily in Buenos Aires. This is transnational propaganda disguised as journalism, and someone is paying for it. The videos have accumulated more than 32 million views, but these are not organic audiences. They come from paid advertising contracted through an Argentine agency called FG Medios SA. The businessman linked to it is named Fernando Oscar Goya. The operation required costumes, scripts, professional recordings, and logistical coordination. This is not amateur work. It is a complete infrastructure dedicated to selling the image of Delcy Rodríguez as a reformist and conciliatory leader. And who designed this strategy? Who wrote the scripts? Suspicion points to Oliver Blanco, the image consultant that Delcy placed as Venezuela's representative before the European Union and the United States. A position disproportionate for someone whose main function appears to be retouching reality. But there is a problem with lies. What is not organic, what is not authentic, eventually dies. And they have already been discovered. That investment was useless, because the truth always finds its way. Question for you all. Have you seen any of these fake videos circulating in your feeds? Tell me in the comments. Let us change the subject, because there is another Chavista figure going through very difficult moments, and unlike the others, this one decided to issue a public threat. Mario Silva, host of La Jogia, was pushed to the margins of state television. The doors of the channels controlled by the regime were closed to him, and his reaction was explosive. He began publicly criticizing what is happening and called on people to organize as a counteroffensive against Delcy Rodríguez. But the most shocking moment was his warning. In a recent broadcast, Mario said verbatim, "If I were to disappear, there are already instructions in place. Knowledge is power." Did you hear that? Mario Silva is threatening to reveal information if something happens to him, and that threat is not directed at the opposition. It is directed at his own revolutionary comrades, against Diosdado, against Delcy, against Jorge Rodríguez. If Mario has information that compromises Chavista figures, information about serious crimes, then he is admitting something very serious. He is admitting he was complicit, that he stayed silent, that he protected criminals while thousands of Venezuelans suffered the consequences of those crimes. Do not come now playing the victim, Mario. You are scared because they might make you disappear. Where was that fear when opponents were disappearing? Where was your voice when an 82-year-old mother was demanding proof of life for her son? Did you say anything about Hugo Moreno, about the hundreds of political prisoners? Absolutely nothing. And now that the monster you helped create is threatening you, now you are afraid. Now you understand what it means to live with that uncertainty. If I were Delcy Rodríguez, I would immediately send a team to interrogate Mario Silva, because he just publicly confessed that he holds sensitive information he considers valuable enough to use as a shield. What is in those files? Who do they implicate? Time will tell. But Mario should be genuinely worried, because when the regime decides to eliminate inconveniences, it has very effective methods, and he is no longer useful to anyone. Speaking of pieces falling, there is a question floating in the air. When does Diosdado Cabello's turn come? Diosdado himself said it publicly weeks ago. He warned that they would go after one and then another. He was right, though he probably did not imagine he would be on the list. They went after Maduro. They went after Padrino López. They went after Tarek Williams Saab. They went after Alex Saab. They are going after Raúl Gorín. The direction is clear. The next step has his name written on it. The United States has laid out specific demands to Delcy Rodríguez, and among those demands, Diosdado Cabello fits into no scenario for any serious transition. His continued presence is an obstacle to any genuine negotiation, and he knows it perfectly. Diosdado has been walking very relaxed lately, as if he does not realize the circle is tightening. But Padrino López also believed he would remain in his position indefinitely, and today he is out. Every person's time comes. And when it comes, there is no advance warning. Also worth mentioning is the removal of Jorge Eliezer Márquez. This figure was one of Maduro's closest allies, his personal aide from the days when Maduro was foreign minister. A relationship of total trust and absolute loyalty. And Delcy cut him loose without a second thought. Does this confirm something obvious? Delcy is not preparing for Maduro's return. She is dismantling everything he built. She is eliminating his loyalists, his structures, his protected figures. The American prosecution has already notified that Venezuela cannot pay for Maduro's legal defense. Delcy publicly washes her hands of it. How strange, how convenient. Now let us go to the news that filled millions of Venezuelans with pride, but that also left an important political lesson. Venezuela won the World Baseball Classic 3-2 against the United States on their own ground. A historic victory that made compatriots around the world erupt in celebration. That night was pure pride, national joy, tears of happiness. But what happened afterward deserves analysis. The players sent the trophy to Venezuela. However, they themselves did not travel. They chose to stay. The reason? To avoid the uncomfortable moment of being received by the Chavista leadership. Imagine that dinner. Athletes representing the best of Venezuela, who put the country's name at its highest, having to pose alongside Delcy Rodríguez and Diosdado Cabello, alongside people identified for drug trafficking, for crimes against humanity, for destroying the very country those players love. That would have been a disgrace. An insult to the intelligence of millions. And the players understood it perfectly. They sent the trophy as a symbolic gesture, but their presence they withheld. It is as if they told the regime, celebrate with the object, but we are not going to legitimize your circus. Delcy Rodríguez had to settle for announcing that the cup would tour all the states of the country. She tried to sell it as an act of generosity from the players. But everyone knows the truth. It was not generosity. It was a powerful message. The real champions are the young men who fought on the field. The trophy is metal and glass. They are the true glory, and they chose not to tarnish themselves by sharing a stage with those whose hands are dirty from so much damage caused. To the players I say from this space, do not go to Venezuela while these people remain in power. Do not cloud this historic triumph. Do not make us endure the painful sight of you alongside drug traffickers. The joy you gave us is immense. Do not ruin it with a photograph that would go down in history as a shame. Let us wait for the day when you can return to a free Venezuela, a Venezuela that deserves to receive you as the heroes you are. Until then, stay where you are and enjoy your achievement far from those who do not even deserve to breathe the same air. Final question for you all. Do you believe the players made the right call by not going to Venezuela? Leave me your opinion. Before closing, I must mention something important. An error we made yesterday. In our coverage of the case of business owners extorted by the GOES in Carúpano, we published images identifying faces. One of those faces belonged to a person who was not a perpetrator, but a victim. This man had gone precisely to file a complaint before the CCPC because his own property had been stolen, and for going to report the crime, he ended up detained. His family contacted us to clarify the situation. We publicly offer our apologies. When one makes a mistake, the right thing is to acknowledge it and correct it. We commit to investigating his case and giving it the visibility it deserves, because he too is a victim of the same extortion system we denounced today. This illustrates perfectly the magnitude of the problem. The corruption network within these institutions runs so deep that even those who go seeking justice end up being run over. It is a vicious circle where honest citizens always lose. And it connects directly to the complaint against Tarek Williams' SAAB, because these extortion cases are not isolated. They are systematic. They are institutional policy. Hundreds of Venezuelans have suffered exactly the same. Arbitrary detentions followed by economic demands, planted evidence against those who cannot pay, families destroyed by the greed of corrupt officials. There is one case that hits me particularly hard. A man named Jorman, with severe hearing difficulties, was transferred from Maracay to Caracas. Officials from the SAAB'S demanded $1,000 from his family. They could not pay. So they planted drugs on him, falsified the detention record, and linked him to another person from the eastern part of the country who had absolutely no connection to him. We know these cases because we have investigated them for years. And now Chavismo wants to act as if Tarek is the problem they just discovered. As if they were not themselves accomplices of the same system that permitted these abuses. Mr. Larry DeBow, you now have the responsibility to investigate. There are hundreds of files on people imprisoned through extortion. People who had everything taken simply for having something. Business owners, merchants, ordinary citizens who committed the sin of being productive in a country governed by thieves. We hope these investigations will be real and not just another political show. Though being honest, expectations are low. What is clear is that Venezuela is navigating a moment of brutal realignment. Delcy Rodríguez is consolidating her power, eliminating everyone who represents a potential threat. Tarek was dangerous because he knew too much. Padrino López was expendable because he no longer served a purpose. González López is useful because he has the right contacts. Mario Silva is an annoyance that will soon be silenced. Diosdado Cabello is an obstacle that will eventually be removed. All of this points toward a transition, but not the transition Venezuelans deserve. It is a controlled transition, a rearrangement between criminal factions, a change of faces without a change of system. But there are also signs that this will not last long. Analysts speak of approximately 1 year to complete the restructuring, elections at the end of this year or the beginning of the next. And at that moment, the key word will be brief. Delcy will be brief. González López will be the shortest serving minister in history. The interior minister will be equally brief. Everything will be brief, because what comes is a complete overhaul. And when that change arrives, get ready. Because what comes is a true turning point, one that shakes the very foundations of this corrupt regime to its core. Meanwhile, let us keep our eyes open. Let us document every abuse. Let us remember every name, because the day of justice will come. And that day, all these figures will have to answer for what they did. The $15 million on Padrino López. The $25 million on Diosdado Cabello. The sanctions against González López. The complaints against Tarek Williams. Every stolen cent. Every life destroyed. Every family separated. All of it carries a price. And that price gets paid. Venezuela deserves better. Venezuela will have better. It is a matter of time, of persistence, of not losing hope. I am Laura Salazar, and this has been Punto de Quiebra al Minuto. Thank you for accompanying me through this analysis. Share this video so more people can know the truth of what is happening. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And remember, the truth is our best weapon. We will see you tomorrow with more information. Take care of yourselves.